I always knew family reunions were a test of nerves and patience. But today, entering my mother's house, it felt like an invisible weight had settled on my shoulders. The familiar aroma of baking lasagna, which should have been comforting, felt like a warning sign. To everyone else, I was just the weird sister, the daughter who chose the world of tech and code. But here I was, about to unveil something that could change all that forever. My expectations for this dinner were simple: a moment of unity, or at least a brief respite from Helena's acidic comments and Lucas's laughter. But as I crossed the threshold, I realized I was being too optimistic. The room was already buzzing, voices rising and falling like a symphony of disdain. I saw my cousin, Raphael, leaning against the counter, sporting a sneering smile as he told a joke about the shiny future I was supposedly building. My heart pounded. He was referring to my project, but the irony in his tone was as clear as day. My eyes scanned the room. My mother's posture was her usual, arms crossed, and an expression easily mistaken for disapproval. She kept glancing at me, as if trying to find justification for her grim predictions. Lucas, on the other hand, was surrounded by friends, mocking me without hesitation. The words echoed in my mind. "Sophia, you should think of something more realistic." The certainty that I would never be good enough for them was ingrained in every laugh and comment floating in the air. "Look who decided to show up," Lucas said, a sarcastic glint in his eyes. The others laughed, and I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Sophia, the programmer, who would have thought? "I guess in your next software update, you should include a success button." There it was again, Lucas reinforcing the idea that I was just a dreamer defying his standards of success. The laughter escalated, and an unbearable heat rose to my head. Subconsciously, I started recording every gesture, every look of contempt. If life was code, then I was about to recompile it. Literally. I had worked in silence, like a software engineer starting a project without fanfare. The IPO was imminent, and every line of code I wrote was not only the foundation of my future, but a way to transform everyone's perception of me. They always said I'd be poor, but today, everyone will know my name. The phrase had become a mantra in my mind, thrown between the echoes of the cruel jokes surrounding me. In this turbulent atmosphere, I decided to go to the kitchen, a space that always offered me some comfort. While stirring the lasagna sauce, trying to distract myself, I thought about how I had gotten here. The countless sleepless nights, the prototypes I redid repeatedly, the occasional meetings with investors who only added more weight to my shoulders. With each criticism and belittlement, a new line of code was born on my journey. It was my way of establishing a response, even if it was still hidden from the voices that insisted on undermining me. "You're quiet, Sophia. Are you all right?" It was my mother, her tone laced with feigned concern. I looked at her, her face painted with expectation and disappointment. I knew she hoped to hear something that would confirm her erroneous beliefs about me. "Just thinking about my project," I replied, trying to remain calm. "Soon things will start to change." Helena let out a bitter laugh. "I hope you're not counting on that to make a living. Tech is such a risky field." Those words cut deeper than I cared to admit. Risky was a concept that had never applied to her own life. I didn't need their validation to move forward. But the lingering pain I felt was that I wasn't ready to confront them. I quickly left the kitchen, resolute. Now there was a plan beginning to take shape in my mind. If they didn't have faith in me, I would make them regret their contempt. At that moment, determination became a burning flame within me. They could mock, but it would only fuel my ambition. I would take action, and I wouldn't stop until my name was recognized. My hands trembled with excitement and anger as I spotted my laptop in my room. This project wasn't just software, it was my redemption. And now the reality was that it could become the weapon against all the doubts surrounding me. "It's time to change the game," I murmured to myself, with renewed determination. The battle plan was only just beginning. As I navigated the hazy memories of my childhood, I realized how much criticism and disdain had always been a part of my daily life. It was as if a thick fog had settled over my life, shaping who I am now, and also who I refuse to be. Memories mixed with feelings of pain and anger would suddenly emerge, like shadows refusing to dissipate. I remembered the days I would lock myself in the attic, surrounded by junk boxes and electronic equipment that no one cared about. It was in this refuge that I found a freedom that eluded me elsewhere, immersing myself in a world that, to many, seemed like just a dream. "What are you doing up there, Sophia? Playing programmer again while everyone else is out having fun?" That's what my mom would say when she found me. Helena, with her peculiar way of expressing love, always mixed care with criticism, as if she wanted to protect me from a world she saw as cruel and unforgiving. Her tone was a constant echo in my mind, a mantra that never let me forget that I should be like everyone else, that dreaming was acceptable only if dreams aligned with her expectations. Looking at my brother, Lucas, in childhood was like watching a supernova explode in vibrant colors. He was the favorite, the star of the family, and in his presence, I became a shadow. "Why don't you do something truly useful, like taking care of the house or studying to be a teacher?" he used to say, with disdain wrapped in a smile. The idea of following a traditional path seemed engraved on the walls of our house, and I was the only one who dared to question that destiny. Lucas's aspiration was an extension of the values our parents always defended, and his pressure only intensified the weight I felt on me. Instead of being like the other girls at my school who played with dolls or attended dances, I spent hours in my world, building circuits and programming small games. Those times were a true escape. Every time I looked at my laptop screen, I plunged into a universe where I was the creator, the goddess of a digital kingdom. Being in front of that screen wasn't just programming. It was laying down the gauntlet in a battle that had been going on for years. It was at a family event that all my efforts were underestimated. It was Lucas's birthday, and there was no joy in my eyes as I found myself surrounded by relatives praising his achievements. He had organized a presentation to showcase his latest invention at a startup, which, in his mind, would make him even more deserving of the family hero status. While everyone applauded him enthusiastically, I felt like a spectator in a play, powerless. Deep down, however, anger was brewing, simmering beneath the surface. Throughout the event, my mother drifted away from me to join the others. Beside her, Lucas showcased his accomplishments, displaying graphs only he understood. I then mustered the courage and mumbled something about my project in development, seeking some kind of validation. "And what good will that do you, Sophia?" Lucas's sarcastic question cut me deep, as if uttered with a knife. That day, amidst the brilliance and heat of the spotlight illuminating Lucas, I made a decision. The decision to no longer be invisible. In the days following that fateful gathering, the idea that I couldn't prove them wrong became a powerful and constant fuel. The notebook, an extension of my being, became my only company in a silence that spoke volumes. That machine was about to become my battlefield. Nights became my allies, as I would immerse myself in my vision. I began to structure my project with fervor, reviewing each line of code, seeking to understand what would make my software different in a saturated market. I, a stubborn programmer, wanted not only to create technology, but to break free from the shackles that had so often bound me. With each new line written, determination became a mantra in my mind. The words of Rose, my childhood friend, also echoed within me. "You've always had what it takes, Sophia," she encouraged me during our meetings. These conversations whispered hopes that shifted my perspective. My struggle wasn't just an internal battle, but a manifestation of who I really was. Someone capable of transforming dreams into tangible realities. My family's everyday life, the seemingly insurmountable structure, became increasingly clear. I observed how everyone was so entrenched in their own visions of success that they couldn't see what I was building. Family disdain was now a screen against which I projected my ambition, a driving force. Something that once discouraged me now became fuel. With each new challenge, my determination boiled, and I knew I had to prepare for a clash. Ultimately, it all came down to the need to prove to myself, more than anyone else, that I was capable of breaking the chains that bound me and taking charge of my own narrative. What was once unattainable began to take shape as a tangible possibility. Having my own project, a software that could impact the world, wasn't just a desire, but a necessity. As I strived to create and innovate, each keystroke transformed into a manifesto against all the voices of the past that insisted on belittling me. What were once shadows became tools on my journey, and this transition provided me with a new perspective. The memories that once diminished me were now springboards that propelled me towards my destiny. I wasn't just fighting against my family's expectations, but affirming my own identity. I was no longer afraid. On the contrary, each day was an opportunity to rise. With this new mindset, I returned to my laptop with renewed focus. The moment to do battle was closer than I imagined. This wasn't just about code. It was about identity, freedom, and finally, power. In that instant, I realized that programming wasn't just what I did. It was who I was. Now, finally, I had the chance to shape not only my future, but the future of everyone who had doubted me. With the fire of determination burning in my heart, I was more than ready to fight. Driven by a fiercely renewed inner fire, I plunged into my project with the passion of someone who had finally understood the depth of their desires. At first, the nights were long and exhausting, filled with bouts of depression and anxiety that stifled my creativity. But as I expanded the scope of what I could do, that pain transformed into inspiration. The silence of my room became a sacred space, where each line of code written was a declaration, a promise to myself that I would overcome the shadows of doubt. I woke up long before sunrise, my heart pounding with anticipation. My laptop was like an extension of my being, its keys worn from the intensity of my work. The screen reflected not only the code, but the raw idea taking shape in my mind. A revolutionary platform that would offer technological solutions to small entrepreneurs, the accessibility and innovation my family had reluctantly turned their backs on. I envisioned a world where ideas could flourish, unburdened by critical voices. During one of these early mornings, I revisited my old notebooks, fragmented memories of ideas I had abandoned, the drafts of a dream I had been afraid to explore. I flipped through the pages, my pen gliding across the faded ink. But these sketches began to come alive again, reminding me that I wasn't starting from scratch. It was as if each sentence and diagram were small pieces of a puzzle that, together, formed the image I wanted to create. I made a list of resources and potential investors, searching for those who might believe in me when my own family still hesitated. The floor of my living room was transformed into an organized chaos of post-it notes, scribbles, and drafts. Each potential name was a spark, a musical note in a symphony yet to be composed. One thing was clear. I needed support and, above all, a network of people who not only understood my vision, but would also propel it forward. I went to local coffee shops, where conversations about technology frequently emerged among startups and freelancers. I talked to longtime friends and new acquaintances, discussing my project and gathering feedback, even though, at times, the appreciation became a double-edged sword. While the excitement was palpable, healthy doubts arose as reminders that this wasn't just a pipe dream. The warmth of the coffee in my hands was comforting, but also a sign of how much I was willing to sacrifice. At one of these meetings, I met Clara, an old high school friend, who was embarking on her own entrepreneurial journey. She had always been someone who believed in me, even when it didn't seem to make sense to anyone else. "You've always had what it takes, Sophia. Remember that," Clara said, as she reviewed the notes I had brought for her. There was a spark in her eyes that reminded me of who I was deep down, a version of myself unburdened, capable of great things. Her words were a rebuttal to all the voices trying to bring me down, especially those of my family. The idea of my own software began to crystallize in my mind during our meetings, and the alternation between enthusiasm and insecurity propelled me forward. With each meeting, a new sensation pulsed, that I wasn't alone on this journey. I was growing and connecting with other dreamers who, like me, were ready to challenge established norms. I analyzed success stories, not just in technology, but in any field where I could find inspiration. What I lacked in technical knowledge, I compensated for with determination and curiosity. I realized that the path to innovation doesn't lie in following the footsteps of those who came before, but in forging your own trails through the thicket. The criticisms I left behind continued to echo, but now I used them as fuel. Every dismissive glance I had faced became a reason to keep pushing. Every snicker during family gatherings lost its sting, becoming instead the wind at my back. They forgot I'm the one in control of my destiny, I thought. One cold winter morning, I woke up with an idea that jolted me awake. The concept of a platform that would make technology accessible to all entrepreneurs, whether small or large, could be the game changer. I even came up with a name: CodeBridge, the bridge between technology and small businesses. It was clear that it could solve the long-standing complaints about the lack of support for entrepreneurs, while at the same time creating a space where I could finally be recognized. I began developing the prototype rapidly. The hours dragged on, but also flew by as the code became a part of me. Each small progress ignited flames of hope and determination. My heart pulsed in sync with the almost frantic breath of creation. The software was shaping itself to my visions, and for the first time in years, I felt I was in control. On the night I finished the first version, something slipped inside me. A sense of accomplishment I had never experienced before. It was the magnificent image of something coming to fruition, and it would only live in the minds of critics. However, while I allowed myself to celebrate this small victory, the shadow of my new reality still loomed on the horizon. The market was saturated, and the challenges were only just beginning. For the first time, I looked at my project not as an escape, but as a battlefield. From then on, I decided that if my family couldn't believe in me, I would prove my worth to myself. Now, I wasn't just fighting to earn respect, but also to assert my own identity in the world I so longed to conquer, elevating and expanding not just code, but a narrative rich in experience, generating the necessary momentum to transform fears into achievements. The time to fight for my reality was now, and I wouldn't let anyone, not even my own family, tell me I wasn't capable of success. The future was finally starting to take shape, a future I would mold with my own hands. After finally completing the first version of my project, CodeBridge, I realized that this was just the first step on a much larger journey. The adrenaline of creation was quickly overshadowed by the challenging reality that lay before me. The market wouldn't be a field of flowers and smiles. I was about to enter a complicated game, an environment where distrust mingled with ambition, and where every move needed to be carefully calculated. For this, I needed to reassess my approach and find the best way to win over investors and users, and above all, to intensify the credibility so lacking in my family history. A few days after the prototype launch, the next step was to seek feedback. With that in mind, I organized a small demonstration in a cozy cafe, where the walls were covered with art from tech companies and startups. I invited a diverse group of professionals, entrepreneurs, experienced developers, and even a casual investor who always listened to me with a certain skepticism. The enthusiasm I felt while preparing the presentation was palpable. At the same time, a latent fear consumed me. There I was, at a table covered with handouts, notes, and my laptop, feeling the anticipation vibrate in the air. A mix of admiration and a little bit of scorn. I remembered Lucas's jokes and my mother's criticisms. It was time to show what I was truly capable of. When the presentation began, the words flowed in a fluid combination of technicality and passion. I talked about how CodeBridge could transform the lives of small business owners, how my software could educate and simplify technology for those who often lacked access to technical knowledge. I knew that if I couldn't charm those investors, I would lose the chance to boost my idea. As the presentation progressed, I felt I was in control. Phrases and data were aligned in my mind, like notes in a symphony that had finally found harmony. I saw the look of interest growing in each of them. The hesitation slowly dissipated, and in its place was a shine indicating that, indeed, they were beginning to see the potential of my vision. Noticing their expressions changing, a mix of confidence and courage grew within me. However, when I finished presenting and opened the floor for questions, their faces became indecipherable. One of the investors, a businessman as attached to conventional rules as he was to his own genes, raised his hand. "This is all very nice, Sophia, but what's your strategy for reaching the small business owners who need your software? How do you plan to make them believe in you?" The questions, while unpleasant, were pertinent. The tension in the room increased, and the adrenaline that had previously propelled me now began to dissipate. I took a deep breath, summoning the confidence I had cultivated until then. I had to transform those dry words into a map. I needed to show that it wasn't just a dream, but a reality that could be tangible. I told them about the extensive research I had conducted. Small business owners are often limited by resources and knowledge. With my platform, I want to offer an easy-to-use service that teaches and empowers. It's not just software, but continuous education. I knew this was the moment to connect my ideas to the true needs of these people who seemed so far away from me, and to expand them to show that technology could bridge distances. And so, as I navigated the complexity of their concerns, I remembered a small event I had attended, where I had said at some point into the microphone, "Technology doesn't need to be complicated to impact people's lives. It can be a bridge." That was the central message I wanted to express, and I wanted those watching to visualize it. The investor's gaze began to soften, and I foresaw a connection that could happen if I made an extra effort. Thus, while independent as I have always been, I remembered that collaboration was also key to my project. Some parts of the room leaned forward, signaling renewed attention. I felt the communication flow more freely, like a fresh breeze after a stuffy day. I was firmer in my intonation and my presence, and as the conversation unfolded, I realized that a connecting line was emerging. It wasn't just about selling software, but about building something that could truly make a difference. After the presentation, I received some timid applause, enough to lift my spirits and make me believe I might be on the right track. The reality, however, was that the feedback I cared about most would come in the form of contacts, invitations to more meetings, and, who knows, some investors willing to merge their interests with my project. In the days that followed, I wrote and rewrote my pitch until the words flowed like water, clear and unobstructed. With each rehearsal, I felt stronger, more capable. And with each passing week, the resistance and hesitation of the meeting room became distant echoes. Over the following weeks, I attended more meetings, learning to further adapt my speech to communicate my vision. It was a tough learning process, and at many times, frustrating. But with each rejection, my determination grew, and I focused more and more on the importance of transforming CodeBridge into the solution I dreamed it could be. Throughout this endless cycle of feedback and reassessment, Clara's support was vital. She accompanied me to several meetings, helping to refine my plan, contributing ideas, and, especially, providing the necessary dose of optimism when uncertainty threatened to overwhelm me. Her presence was like a beacon, guiding and pushing me whenever the wave of doubt threatened to drown me. Between meetings and presentations, I continued to develop CodeBridge. With each passing day, the prototype gained more shape and robustness. I began to understand how the concerns of small entrepreneurs were not just a matter of money, but of education and emotional support. The process wasn't just technical, it was human. And this insight made me redouble my efforts around the software's design, making it accessible and intuitive. I was no longer just building a program, but a community of learning and support. The time I spent building CodeBridge offered a new spectrum of understanding. The need to make technical knowledge accessible was great, especially for those without a background in the field. Throughout the development process, I not only used influences from the world of programming, but also from pedagogy, seeking to understand how to teach technology better. With the first software versions on the table, and a semester of learning under my belt, I started integrating modules to help small entrepreneurs understand the most basic concepts of technology through videos, interactive tutorials, and discussion forums. The idea was to allow them not only to use the software, but also to grow in knowledge, so they could make decisions based on a deeper understanding. While working on the updates, I visualized many of my old memories, Lucas's sarcastic jokes and my mother's criticisms transformed into images that propelled me forward. They weren't just memories of pain, but also signals of motivation. One day, I would show them that I could do something incredible, that I wasn't an inadequate dreamer, but rather the archetype of someone who rose from the ashes and transformed criticism into strength. Thus, throughout this time of evolution, I didn't just create a product that offered software. I decided that, in some way, I would also help other potential entrepreneurs find their paths. It was time to go back and seek inspiration in frustrations, borrowing experiences that could be shaped and shared. CodeBridge wasn't just about technology. It was about finding the voice of the silent and giving voice to those who lacked it. This entire process became a kind of catalysis, a personal and professional transformation. With each meeting and each word spoken, I was not only creating a business opportunity, but opening a door to reconnecting with my true self, a gentle but focused warrior, undertaking a journey where I not only fought for myself, but also so that others wouldn't have to fight alone. My time had come. CodeBridge was about to cross the threshold from idea to reality, and I was more than ready. My fight towards the future was reinforced by a new hope. I had built a solid foundation, not only for my software, but for my life. It was time to show the world not only what I had built, but also who I truly was. With the foundation of CodeBridge solidified and the first steps taken towards its release, the next phase of my journey required a bold plan. The launch of my product couldn't be a mere event. It should be a true declaration that I was here to stay. It was time to chart a course that would not only result in an IPO, but would also dismantle the vision my family had of me. I needed to show everyone that I wasn't just the dreamer they knew, but a tenacious entrepreneur, willing to use technology to change lives. The first thing to do was to organize a formal product presentation. I invited potential investors, industry journalists, and of course, my family. I wanted them to be there, witnessing not only the development of my software, but also the transformation that was occurring within me. The event promised to be grand, and I knew I needed to deliver a convincing performance. Nervousness was present, but at the same time, a wave of excitement pulsed within me. In the days leading up to the presentation, my focus was on the final software updates. While I had already made significant progress, entrepreneurs and potential investors wanted to see something fresh, innovative, groundbreaking. Time flew by as I reviewed every detail, reiterating functionalities and organizing a compelling demonstration. What could generate genuine interest was a live test of how CodeBridge worked in practice, showcasing a small business owner from a similar background to mine, someone who could be living proof that my software could transform how small businesses operated. Anxiety mixed with excitement as the event day approached. To ensure every aspect of the presentation was perfect, I chose an ambitious venue, an unexplored auditorium in an innovation center that reflected the modernity of my proposal. The eve of the launch was psychological torture. The critical voices that were once my biggest weakness now resonated completely differently. The energy I channeled was no longer the same in the face of pessimism. It had become a force that not only told the story of CodeBridge, but my own story. On the morning of the event, I arrived early at the auditorium, full of anticipation, and couldn't help but meticulously check every aspect of the setup. The lighting, the layout, and the arrangement of the chairs. Everything was ready and enveloped in an atmosphere of transformation. As the stagehand announced the presentation was about to begin, my heart pounded, and the background music filled the room with a soft sound. The space began to fill with people, a mix of familiar and unfamiliar faces appearing behind the stage. The key investors were there, and for a brief second, the reality of the situation hit me. I was about to reveal not only a product, but also myself. Finally, when I stepped onto the stage, a wave of heat washed over me. Hearing the enthusiastic applause, adrenaline coursed through my veins, and the outside world faded away. "Welcome to the CodeBridge launch," I began firmly, acknowledging the important figures in the audience, whose eyes assessed my every move. In a refreshing moment, everything heavy disappeared, and I began to talk about the countless hours I had spent, inspired by the stories of small entrepreneurs facing challenges I knew so well. I spoke with fervor, knowing that every word carried an unparalleled emotional weight. On that stage, Lucas's jokes and my mother's harsh words became distant shadows, no longer a definition of who I was, but a foundation upon which I was finally building something grand. My thoughts drifted as I demonstrated the platform's functionality, showcasing the software and its impact. The room was silent, and it seemed everyone was absorbing not only the software, but the metamorphosis occurring within me. CodeBridge is more than just an app. It's a movement. These words resonated with visceral power, as if I was about to unleash a revolution in how technology could be accessed. Finally, at the end of the presentation, I opened the floor for questions and interaction. Each face in the audience was a blank canvas on which I could see curiosity manifesting. Like a stage where magic unfolded, I heard a question I had expected, a crucial one. Sophia, what makes CodeBridge different from the solutions already on the market? Smiling, I took a deep breath, and as I prepared to answer, I realized that not just a presentation, but a meaningful conversation was unfolding. I listed the adaptations we had made over time, starting to dedicate more time to interactive features, user centricity, and how accessibility made my software indispensable. We work on the premise that any entrepreneur should have the seriousness of a big brand. It doesn't matter the volume of sales, but how much of this teaching is being shared. Gradually, the room lit up with smiles and expressions of support. The critical voices began to fade and transform into enthusiastic applause. The feeling of validation began to flood my heart. I not only had data and numbers, but the emotions I managed to evoke were converting into the applause ringing around me. Throughout my life, I had collected criticism and doubts, but now I was nurturing a new space, a new beginning. The interaction with the audience became a true dialogue, allowing me to test the waters of how my product could make a difference in their lives. Each interaction was an important and constructive step. Many questions arose, and with them, the feeling that I could use their curiosity to further refine CodeBridge. A woman in the back raised her hand and said, "Your tutorials are important, but how do you ensure that the software implementation will be easy for people with little familiarity with technology?" This question made me think for a moment, but my answer was immediate. Implementing CodeBridge is like teaching someone to drive a car. At first it seems complicated, but once you learn, the freedom that technology offers becomes evident. We provide interactive tutorials, which are not just manuals, but visual guides that help the user from the first access. And in addition, our discussion forums are a second line of support where we already have humility in the experience, allowing them to learn from their peers. The woman smiled, and the atmosphere seemed to warm with her approval. At the end of the night, as the room emptied, I realized that the event had been a greater success than I had ever imagined. I received business cards, promises of collaboration, and invitations to new meetings. My friends and family, who until then had their doubts, were now immersed in the possibility of something bigger, and that was something I never thought I would see. Finally, among all the faces, I saw Clara, standing there with a huge smile. She congratulated me and said, "You did it, Sophia. What you built today is just the beginning. People are willing to listen and join you." To which I exclaimed, "Let's celebrate." And so, we found a small bar near the auditorium, where we toasted not only to present successes, but to the futures we would surely share over the years. The night continued with laughter and conversations about the different opportunities that would arise. It was a refreshing feeling. As I felt the excitement fill the air and the vibrancy of new connections, I realized that CodeBridge was no longer just an idea. It was a tangible reality that could transform the lives of all small entrepreneurs, just like me. Going home was a journey of reflections and bright lights in my mind. Arriving home, I went straight to my notebook, where I opened the CodeBridge editor. I started sketching ideas for new modules that could be included in the software, as well as planning ways to expand the community around it. With the energy sparked by the interaction and the new collaborations in progress, I was ready to transform the experience we had in that environment into a clear path for the future. As night fell, I reflected on how this step could change not only my future, but possibly the destiny of many who were on the verge of transformation. Virtually, CodeBridge was just beginning. I knew that everything I had gone through had led me to this moment. Thus, not only the technology I created, but the journey I took was a testament to what resilience is, a testament to the power of believing in oneself. I was more than ready to not only launch a software, but to awaken a movement, an awakening that would resonate in the hopes of many who need this same transformation. I was about to begin a new era, full of potential and possibilities. The morning after the launch of CodeBridge, a wave of energy ran through my body. The spirit of celebration still danced in my heart, but there was work to be done. Opening my laptop, I saw that my inbox was full of new messages, including an email from an investor who had shown increasing interest in my software. The adrenaline surged. The first step was taken, but I knew this was just the tip of the iceberg. As I looked through the messages, the thrill of accomplishment mixed with anxiety, not only for the future of my project, but also for my family's reactions. I wanted them to be there to acknowledge my triumph, but I feared they might still cling to the ingrained prejudice in their minds. I prepared a detailed presentation for the meeting with the investor. I had committed to exploring new features that would make the software even more appealing. I drafted a plan for a month of continuous feedback with our first users, which could bring significant improvements. CodeBridge isn't just a web page, it's an active commitment to connecting with every entrepreneur who needs support, I thought as I typed, full of determination. The day of the meeting arrived quickly. Entering a modern co-working space, the creative atmosphere breathed innovation. Eduardo, the investor, looked at me with a smile. "Sophia, it was exciting to see your launch. I'm curious about your next step." He seemed genuinely interested, and this fueled my confidence. I talked about the features I planned to implement and how they could address issues faced by small entrepreneurs. I spoke with fervor, emphasizing the importance of being an ally, and not just a transactional company. Eduardo listened attentively, taking notes as I presented my long-term vision. His question about growth expectations was crucial. I took a deep breath and put aside my insecurity. I hope that in 6 months, we can see an improvement in the user journey. CodeBridge will be a turning point for many entrepreneurs who don't know where to begin. The atmosphere carried an air of expectation. Eduardo continued to ask insightful questions, and as the conversation unfolded, I realized I had the chance to solidify a partnership. He seemed satisfied with what he heard, and at the end, his words left me ecstatic. "I'm willing to invest in your vision." That validation meant more than the financial investment. It represented support in fulfilling my mission. In the weeks that followed, I worked tirelessly, accompanied by Eduardo, who became a mentor. He offered valuable advice on the software's positioning, and our circle of investors began to expand. The pressure was intense, but the criticism I faced became a powerful fuel, and with each interaction, new experiences and opportunities arose. During this period, I received an invitation to an innovative technology fair. The chance to showcase CodeBridge on a larger stage was unmissable. The preparations were intense. I hired a dedicated team, and we designed a vibrant booth, reflecting not only the software, but the mission it represented. On the day of the fair, the expectation was palpable. The atmosphere was full of energy and enthusiasm. The booth was set up, and as the event began, I felt waves of anticipation washing over me. The vibrant movement of people approached, and each interaction was an opportunity. The enthusiasm around CodeBridge began to grow rapidly, with visitors stopping to interact, ask questions, and offer feedback. However, among the compliments, I heard a familiar comment from a corner. "This is just another tech idea that might not go anywhere." It was Lucas. His gaze was unwavering, as if he were determined to belittle my effort. At first, his words stung, but I quickly realized there was no room for resentment. Choosing empathy, I decided to approach him with a fresh perspective. With a smile on my face, I approached him. "Hi, Lucas. I see you're here supporting small business owners. His expression shifted slightly. Even his group fell silent. I was just curious about what you think. I took a deep breath and seized the opportunity. CodeBridge is a platform designed to help people understand and integrate into the world of technology. It's a chance for many, like us, to stand out. The conversation flowed, and I felt I could create a space for sharing. By the end of the conversation, I noticed a change in Lucas. He seemed more interested and, during our interaction, declared, "I may not have believed it at first, but what you're doing seems promising." Stories of growth were unfolding. The day continued, and by the end, the atmosphere at the booth reached a level of pure camaraderie. CodeBridge wasn't just a project, it was a commitment to all those who needed a chance and a new approach to using technology to create learning spaces. After the event, the evening was filled with reflection. On my way home, I felt that this day had unfolded into much more than a simple event. It was a journey not only of achievements, but of personal growth. The commitment I had made had connected me with people who shared the same desire to give back. At home, I quickly sat down in front of my computer and opened the CodeBridge editor. I began sketching ideas for new modules that could be included in the software, thinking about how to expand the community around it. I realized that this was the ideal moment to further empower my proposal through a collaborative work mode. As night fell, a new determination arose within me. With each word typed, I became aware that I wasn't just building software, but also a legacy that could touch the lives of many people. The journey was only beginning, and like a story in progress, I was ready to transform the CodeBridge narrative into something grand. At the end of this journey, I recognized the power of resilience and believing in myself. The challenges that once seemed enormous were now opportunities that would shape my own story. I was more than ready to not only launch software, but to spark a movement, a call that would resonate with the hopes of all those who needed transformation. The future opened before me, and the new era was about to blossom, full of potential and opportunities. I had taken the reins of my destiny, and now the revolution that was about to take strong root in fertile ground began to form. CodeBridge wasn't just a tool. It was my declaration that the impossible could be achieved. The journey only intensified, and I was determined to see how far it could take me. In the months following the launch of CodeBridge, I experienced a significant transformation, both in my personal life and in the software's trajectory. The confidence I gained, the newfound credibility, and the partnerships I solidified began to bear fruit. Meetings with investors, users, and new partners became commonplace, fueled by a constant cycle of feedback and development. Each interaction, each new user joining the community, reinforced my commitment to transforming CodeBridge into an essential resource for small business owners. One of the key advancements I implemented was the mentorship function, allowing more experienced entrepreneurs to connect with those just starting out. This initiative fostered a valuable exchange of experiences and strengthened bonds within the CodeBridge community. The interaction between veterans and newcomers was crucial in creating a collaborative learning environment where each entrepreneur could grow in knowledge and confidence. With Clara by my side, we talked about the importance of taking CodeBridge to new heights. "You need to go to the upcoming tech conference," she said, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. For me, this conference could be the perfect chance to present CodeBridge on a larger stage and connect with other entrepreneurs who shared the same vision. The preparations were intense. I worked tirelessly on the presentation and the creation of promotional materials that would capture the essence of CodeBridge. My nerves were on edge, but within me, there was a strength that grew with each passing day. The event promised to bring together some of the brightest minds in the industry and provide a platform where I could not only present my software, but also witness the power of collective innovation. When the big day finally arrived, a palpable energy filled the auditorium. Accompanied by vibrant decor and a welcoming booth, I prepared to share the vision I had brought to life. Once on stage, the bright lights shone on me as the act of presenting became a way to give voice to every dream I had cherished over the years. "Welcome to CodeBridge, a solution to the challenges faced by small business owners," I began. The audience was attentive, and I was determined to convey not only information, but also emotion. I shared stories of users who benefited from the platform, how the software provided them with valuable insights and a new perspective on managing their businesses. A crucial question arose. Sophia, how do you manage to stand out in a saturated market? I took a deep breath and replied, the real difference of CodeBridge is our focus on community and education. We're not just selling a product. We're offering a real solution and access to knowledge that can change lives. The reactions started pouring in. A buzz filled the room. Conversations intensified around the booth as people approached me to inquire about the platform. The energy was infectious, and every compliment, every smile, strengthened my conviction that I was accomplishing something bigger. CodeBridge was ceasing to be just a project. It was becoming a symbol of hope. Throughout the day, I noticed my family was there, watching closely. The most impactful moment came when Lucas, who had initially been skeptical, approached after hearing the supportive voices around my booth. He looked at me, his eyes showing a newfound understanding. Sophia, I'm impressed. What you've created is beyond anything I could have imagined. I can't deny that. A warmth washed over me, unlike anything I'd ever felt before. At the end of the conference, I went home energized, filled with new connections and promises of collaborations. I began to realize that CodeBridge was becoming a living project, driven by people who believed in its essence. That night, while reviewing notes and contacts on my laptop, a new idea took shape. I needed a robust marketing strategy to further expand the user community. As the week unfolded, fueled by the conference's energy, I wrote a marketing plan that focused on engaging both new and existing users. The idea was to create campaigns that not only promoted the software, but also fostered a space for learning and support, empowering entrepreneurs to connect and thrive together. I started working on a series of webinars that would address vital topics for small business owners, allowing participants to connect and discuss. With every line of code and every conversation I conducted, the life of the project began to branch out. CodeBridge was solidifying itself as a real bridge between small business owners and technology, a space where knowledge could flourish. I realized I wasn't just developing software. I was writing a new story, a story of transformation. So, at the end of a journey filled with challenges and achievements, I understood the true power of resilience and self-affirmation. What once seemed impossible was now clearly laid out before me. The future not only opened up, but allowed me to see a bright and promising dawn. I was no longer the discouraged programmer of the past. I was a transformative force, and CodeBridge wasn't just a tool. It was my declaration that the impossible could be achieved. The movement was beginning, and the revolution I had planted would begin to bear fruit that would transform not only my life, but also the lives of many others. I was about to navigate new waters, more confident than ever, and ready to make history.